While Viking ships might just look like cool wooden boats with dragon heads to most people, they were actually one of the most advanced survival tools of their time. These longships weren't built for comfort. They were built for speed, flexibility, and dominance. Light enough to be carried over land, strong enough to survive the open sea, and fast enough to outrun almost anything on the water. Some of them could cruise at 12 knots with just a handful of rowers. What makes that even more impressive? Skilled Viking builders could assemble an entire longship in just 10 hours, using nothing but raw timber, hand tools, and teamwork. That kind of speed and precision doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of centuries of knowledge, where every tool, every cut, every tree was chosen for a reason. The longship wasn't just a boat, it was a passport, a war machine, and a symbol of power. And while modern movies love to show Viking ships as massive floating fortresses, most were actually sleek, narrow, and designed to land anywhere, even in just a few feet of water. They weren't made to sit in a harbor. They were made to show up where no one expected and leave just as fast. So how exactly did the Vikings build a ship from scratch in just 10 hours? Let's strip it back to the beginning and watch it come together step by step. Building a Viking ship wasn't as simple as chopping down the nearest tree and hoping for the best. It required very specific types of wood, chosen not just for strength, but for how they grew. The two main stars, oak and pine. Oak was used for the keel and structural parts. It's dense, durable, and tough enough to survive the open sea. Pine, on the other hand, was lighter and easier to shape, perfect for planking. But here's the twist. Viking builders weren't just cutting planks from straight logs. They were looking for curved trees, branches, roots, even oddly grown trunks. Why? Because those natural curves were stronger than anything you could carve by hand. A root that curved just right could become a ship's rib. A bent branch might fit the prow like it was custom designed by nature itself. It's a method modern shipbuilders call grown timbers, but the Vikings were doing it 1,000 years ago. Think of it like a giant wooden puzzle where nature already shaped the pieces. You just had to find the right ones. That meant wandering the forest, sometimes for hours, looking for the perfect fit. A tree with the wrong grain or angle could splinter under pressure, or worse, during a storm at sea. Using the wrong timber would be like trying to build a race car out of driftwood. It might look the part, but good luck making it to shore. Once the right trees were found, they'd be marked, felled, and dragged back to the build site by hand, sled, or sometimes even floated down rivers. Step one was done. Now came the real challenge, turning raw logs into a seaworthy frame. Once the right wood was selected, it was time to turn raw trees into a seaworthy ship. And to do that, Viking shipbuilders relied on a small, surprisingly simple toolkit. No power saws, no measuring tape, no blueprints, just skill, and a few razor-sharp tools passed down for generations. The axe. This was the real MVP. Vikings used broad-headed axes for felling trees, carving ribs, even shaping planks. One tool, dozens of uses. Think of it like a Swiss Army knife. If the Swiss were 6'2", wore fur, and conquered half of Europe. The odds and odds looks a bit like a hoe that went to woodworking school. It was used to hollow out beams and smooth surfaces. Shipwrights would rhythmically swing it along the grain, kind of like giving the wood a haircut. One wrong move, though, and it's your ankle getting trimmed. The draw knife. A blade with handles on both ends, used to shave and shape long planks, pulled toward the body in smooth strokes. It wasn't just a shaping tool, it was a finesse tool, like planing a surface with nothing but muscle memory and a good eye. The auger A, hand-powered drill used for boring holes through thick oak beams. No electricity, just twist and grunt until it gives. Viking shipbuilders didn't skip arm day. Measuring? Mostly eyeball. Some shipwrights use carved wooden rods for basic proportions. Others just use their hands, feet, or elbows. And believe it or not, they got it remarkably precise. It's like building a grand piano using vibes and intuition. Before pencils, Viking builders used charcoal dust or soot to mark straight lines on timber. They'd rub it into grooves or string a soot-covered cord tight and snap it onto the wood, leaving behind a clean, dark line. It's like ancient chalk line technology, low-tech, but laser-sharp. And yes, sometimes it left their fingers looking like they just lost a thumb war with a fireplace. Every tool had one thing in common: simplicity. But in skilled hands, these tools could shape a ship that crossed oceans and came back. The keel of a Viking ship is like the spine of a living creature. Everything starts here, and if you get it wrong, the whole build wobbles, twists, or sinks. That's why Viking shipbuilders spent more time shaping the keel than any other single part of the ship. It started with a long, straight oak log, carved and planed by hand until it held just the right shape. Not perfectly straight, though. A good keel had something called shear, a slight upward curve toward both ends. This curve wasn't decorative. It helped the ship ride waves instead of slamming into them like a dolphin gliding over the surface. Once the keel was shaped, it was laid on a level base, usually supported by logs or stones. Everything was built up from this. If the keel sat uneven, the whole ship would twist. It's the shipbuilding equivalent of trying to build a house on a trampoline. Next came the stem and stern posts, rising at sharp angles to give the ship its signature sweeping silhouette. These were often made from grown timbers, curved pieces chosen months earlier, now locked into place like a natural extension of the keel. With those in place, it was time to build the skeleton, what Viking builders called the frame. Ribs were attached along the keel, forming the curved body of the ship. These ribs were carved to precise angles by eye. No calculators, no blueprints, just memory, rhythm, and experience. Each rib was fastened to the keel with hand-carved wooden dowels or iron rivets. One by one, the shape of the ship emerged. Not flat, not boxy, but curved and flowing. Think of it like building a fish out of timber, flexible, fast, and ready for water. By the end of this step, the ship looked like a skeleton pulled from the sea. Bare bones, but full of potential. This is where the Viking ship truly takes shape, where timber starts to move like water. The technique? Clinker planking. Planks are overlapped like fish scales, running from bow to stern in a spiraling, rising pattern. Each one slightly overlaps the one below, forming a watertight seal without glue, pitch, or caulk. This overlapping method wasn't just for looks, it was the key to Viking speed and flexibility. When the sea hit hard, the planks flexed and absorbed the impact instead of cracking. It's like giving the ship suspension, except the springs are made of wood. Each plank had to be hand-shaped to fit snugly against the curve of the ship. They were fastened with iron rivets, hammered through and clenched tight with metal washers. One by one, the hull rose upward in a flowing line, wide in the middle, narrow at the ends, designed to slice through waves like a knife. Here's a wild detail. The entire hull was thin, sometimes just an inch thick. But thanks to the overlapping design, the structure was both lightweight and shock-resistant. In a properly built longship, the planks weren't rigid. They moved with the water. It was less like building a wall and more like crafting a living creature. And just like a fish, every part had a purpose. Big planks at the bottom for stability, smaller ones near the top to keep the weight down and the ride fast. The last piece of a Viking longship wasn't structural. It was symbolic. The dragon head, mounted at the prow, was the finishing touch. Carved from a single block of wood, it was equal parts craftsmanship, protection, and psychological warfare. No two dragon heads were exactly the same. Some were fierce, with snarling teeth and flared nostrils. Others were more abstract, twisting serpents, stylized beasts, even mythical birds. But they all served the same purpose: to strike fear into enemies and ward off evil spirits during long voyages. Fitting the head to the prow was a precision job. It had to align perfectly with the keel and stem post, off by an inch, and it would look crooked from every angle. Carving and placing it was like threading a needle with a battle axe. But once it was on, the ship wasn't just finished. It was transformed. No longer just wood and iron, but a creature with a spine, ribs, and a face, ready to cross oceans or conquer them. With the dragon head carved and mounted, the ship was finally complete. But building it was only half the story, because once it hit the water, this thing moved like nothing else. No engine, no metal hull, and yet, somehow, Viking ships could outpace modern boats. The secret? It's hidden in the sail, the shape, and something Viking captains knew that science is still catching up to. Click here to find out how Viking ships sailed faster than modern boats, without engines,